In case you were curious, these are the cartridges that we're talking about today. This is a brass case and this is an aluminum case. The two cartridges are basically identical. In fact, they are identical except for the case. They use the same colored bullets, the primers are the same color, and even the head stamps are a little bit different. The aluminum ones say CCI NR 9mm Luger, and the other ones say Blazer 9mm Luger. But they are still in very, very similar boxes, just one says aluminum and one says brass. Oh, this video has been so much work. And not because it's a hard topic, but because I kept on running into different issues. Okay, if you don't care about any of that, I'll leave a timestamp on a point that you can skip to. If you do care about that and you want to hear about my woes, continue watching. All right, my inspiration for this video was that I had some 9mm Makarov Blazer aluminum. And when I went to my local stores to find a 9mm Luger Blazer, all I could find was Blazer brass. So I wanted to do a video comparing the two rounds, the 9mm Makarov and the 9mm Luger, and I didn't know if I could use Blazer brass for that because, well, I didn't know the differences. So then that led to a second question that sparked this video. What's the difference between 9mm Luger Blazer aluminum and 9mm Luger Blazer brass? I was looking it up online and I found there was a difference. Blazer brass is usually just a slightly higher velocity. So I decided to test that for you guys in a video. I thought it'd be pretty simple to make, and I was wrong. I ran into problems right away. The first one was finding them. It was during COVID, ammo prices were a little higher, and I knew this was just for a video, so I didn't want to spend $100 on a video that was going to be pretty quick. So I bought one box of each. That was mistake number one. Okay, so I took this ammunition to the range to test it, and I did. But that day I was having major chronograph issues. I didn't notice this until I got home, so I had shot some of my ammunition that I didn't have that much of to begin with to make that video. Okay, then I brought this ammunition out to the range again and was having a second problem. I went to chronograph it, and my phone overheated because it was really, really hot that day, and my phone just couldn't take it. I didn't notice that until after I had shot the string. Alright, so I had to do it a third time. This time I made sure my phone was in the shade when I shot it, so got my phone in the shade, shot it a third time. But by this time I didn't have that much ammo to test with, so I only fired 6-shot strings. I would have liked to do more, I just didn't have the ammo for it. Alright, so I decided, okay, I didn't have a very big sample size, let's reshoot this again. By this time I had sold the Bull Armory Cherokee that I had been testing with, and I got my CZP-09. Now, two problems with that. Number one, it was really, really sunny that day, and there was snow on the ground, so all of that snow was reflecting back into the chronograph. It was too bright, and the chronograph results were inconsistent. Chronographs have a hard time measuring smaller cartridges sometimes, so the results were just inconsistent with my 9mm. So I had to throw out all of that footage. The other problem I have with the CCP-09 is that I just don't like it. Now, don't hear me wrong on this. The CCP-09 is a fantastic handgun. I have had very reliable results with my CCP-09. I've had it be fairly accurate when other people shoot it. It simply does not fit my hand. And I know that's kind of a cope. I don't care. I have shot this pistol a lot, probably 300 to 500 rounds. I know that's not that much, but it should be good enough that you can shoot the pistol well, and I just can't. I think it's that the grip is just too thin for me. So I, sadly, am going to be getting rid of that handgun. I was really hoping I was going to like it. If you want to know what handgun I do like, I love the CZ82. It is girthy, it fills my hand, and my handeth overflow. I love this handgun, don't necessarily love that handgun. Okay, so all of the woes out of the way, I am still presenting the limited information I have to you guys, because I do think it's still enough data to show that there is a pattern, although it's not accurate on exactly what that pattern is. But it is still enough to show a general pattern. All the testing in this video is done with my Bull Cherokee. I no longer have that handgun, but it had just under a 4-inch barrel. I think it was 3.75 inches. So that is the handgun. And I do want to do a part 2 on this video. The reason I want to do a part 2 is one, for a larger sample size so that I can get better testing results for you guys. The second reason I want to do a part 2 is because the largest thing that people say for why this ammunition has different velocities is that the aluminum is not as good at sealing the case mouth around the chamber, and so some of those gases get out around the chamber. Okay, now with the common claim that gases are escaping behind the case and not following the bullet, and that's what's lowering the velocity, I think if that was happening, you would see a lot more discoloration on the case. And you'll notice the brass cases also have that same scuffing on the sides that the aluminum cases have. But for comparison, these are what two steel cases look like. And with steel cases, this is a lot more well known to happen. This is steel cased 308. And you'll notice how much discoloration and how much darker the case mouth is right there on the neck of the case. Sorry, not on the mouth is right here, but on the neck of the case. This is a Tula and this is a Silver Bear, and you will see it on both of these steel-cased rounds. So I think that that general claim might be wrong. I would like to test that general claim. And I think the way to do that would be to buy a box of Blazer aluminum and a box of Blazer brass, pull the bullets out, dump out the powder, replace them with new powder, and use that new powder, the same bullets, but just different cases, and see, is this ammunition any different? Then you can test if you have the exact same loading, just a different case, if the case actually contributes to the lower velocity. So, I want to do a part 2. This is just part 1, and the data is limited. All right, all of that out of the way, let's talk about the time on the range.
1,097. 1,073. 1,070. 1,085. 1,066. 1,063. Okay, so I just shot the Blazer aluminum. Now I'm gonna shoot Blazer brass. 1,104. Had an error on that one. 1,092. 1,036. 1,097. Error. 1,091. 1,071.
All right, that was the time on the range. I have 3 data sets, so I'm going to be looking down at my notes a little bit. With the aluminum ammunition, our lowest velocity was 1,063 feet per second, the highest was 1,097 feet per second, and that gave us an average of 1,075.7 feet per second. With the brass ammunition, we had that one outlier of 1,036. Now, you'll notice that there was a cut after I shot that round, and that was because I got up and changed something on the chronograph. I don't know if I hit one of the poles that holds up the sunshades, or what exactly I did. Also, this number is considerably lower than all of the other rounds in the string. So I'm going to throw that number out. With that number out, our velocity low was 1,071, and our velocity high was 1,104. That gave us a total average of 1,091 feet per second, and that is about 15 feet per second higher than the aluminum ammunition. Now, normally, I would say that that is within the variation of one round to the next, and that just is because I fired 2 different strings, and 2 different strings are going to have different results. I'm not going to say that today. And the reason is because it is a well-documented thing that Blazer brass is slightly higher than Blazer aluminum. So I want to look further into these numbers as well as at some other numbers. Looking further into these numbers, one of the things we see is that the numbers for the brass are consistently just a little bit higher than the numbers for the Blazer aluminum, giving us that higher average. It's not necessarily a matter of we have a large string here and a large string here, and the large string is just a little bit higher. The numbers are pretty tight, and it is a little bit higher. Okay, so since we have that 1.4% higher velocity, let's talk about the components of these 2 ammunitions and look at how they're loaded. The bullets are basically exactly the same. Our lowest bullet for the brass ammunition is 114.7 grains, and our lowest bullet for the aluminum ammunition is 114.6 grains. Our highest for the brass is 115, our highest for the aluminum is 115.3. But the averages between these ammos, the aluminum is 114.94, and the brass is 114.82. That is about 0.1% of a difference in the bullets. I'd be surprised if they didn't use the exact same bullets, and that these two numbers got much closer together as we expanded the sample size. But I only had a few bullets to pull apart, given the woes I talked about in the introduction, so these are the numbers that we have. However, the powders are much more noticeable. With the aluminum, the powder weight low was 4.2 grains, and the powder weight high was 4.4 grains, giving us an average of 4.3 grains. With the brass ammunition, the powder weight low was 4.4, meaning that the low for the brass ammunition is the exact same as the high for the aluminum ammunition. And our powder weight high for the brass ammunition is 4.6 grains. This gave us an average of 4.54 grains. So the brass ammunition has 5.6% more powder than the aluminum ammunition and a 1.4% higher velocity. Now, we know from other ammunition testing that an increase in chamber pressure or an increase in powder is going to have a smaller but still noticeable increase on the velocity. So if we have a 5.6% increase in powder between the aluminum and the brass ammunition, we would expect to have a noticeable increase in the velocity. At 1.4%, it is smaller but noticeable. So there is something here that is actually different in the loading between Blazer aluminum and Blazer brass that increases the velocity. Now, I know that is really in the weeds and a lot of people probably don't care about that, but this is the stuff that I find really interesting, and I know there are some people who watch this channel that find it really interesting too. Now, people have made the claim that the aluminum is just slower in spreading and or spreads differently, and that is why there is the lower velocity. I can't say that that is absolutely not true. However, I can say for certain that that is not the only factor with this. Subscribe to this channel. Eventually, when I have more of this ammunition to test, and when I have somebody who can help me reload this ammunition, you will see a part 2 on this video and on this topic. All of that being said, I am 9mm Mauser Man, and I talked about a very, very, very slight difference between two cartridges for 15 minutes. So I'm gonna go to bed, but I lived on.
Which proves it's hard to get the best of a man named John.
John.